Hello, this is Kesha Rogers with LaRouche Pack, and we have a very important update for you. I am joined today by Brian Lantz, and we're going to have a conversation on what is happening to our nation's energy grid, and particularly focused right here in Texas. And this update comes at a moment where many of you know that Brian and I have had discussions in the past concerning the breakdown of the Texas energy grid, especially going back to that devastating period where many Texans suffered with the February freeze. And of course, we had seen winter freeze and weather conditions that had not been seen in a very long time, that the grid was unprepared, that we had windmills that were freezing over that hadn't been weatherized. And the result of this was that the ERCOT, the Energy Reliability Council of Texas, suffered some major setbacks, and there was all types of blow up that happened. Well, since then, it's been stated, oh, the problem has been solved and that there's not going to be an energy crisis. But well, for those of us who live in Texas, we know that that's not true. As a matter of fact, what we're seeing is even further devastation of our energy grid. The fact that the windmills and solar panels that have taken over parts of West Texas and Texas have been a complete disaster. But also the fact that in the recent period, last summer, we witnessed record heat waves that caused major blackouts in the state, that caused tremendous strain on our power grids. And so now, just in this past weekend, we wanted to report on this, and I want to get Brian's assessment on what is happening and what can be done about the continued breakdown of the energy grid here in Texas, as an example, and where this is coming from. So ERCOT has now told the consumers, or told citizens in Texas, that you just need to cut down on your energy use, that with record heat waves, with parts of the state facing the triple digits, 105 degrees, that you need to turn your air conditioning units up to 78 degrees, right? Or you need to not run your appliances after a certain amount of time. Well, what is this actually going to do? Well, one of the things that I want to ask Brian about is, over this past weekend, in the month of May, we're not even quite in the summer yet, we're seeing it was announced that 6 power plants actually went down. And so these power plants that needed to have maintenance done on them actually went out of commission because of the fact that they were told to keep running even when they were not up to par to be able to carry out the demands that were put up on them. And you had over 2,900 megawatts, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, that went down from these 6 power plants. So that's just an example. Now, so this is the area I want Brian to take up. Tell us what's going on here. Why are we suffering such strain to the grids here in Texas? And what can we expect coming out of this?
We got to build more baseload power plants, specifically nuclear power plants, and new natural gas combined cycle power plants in addition. And coal, that's fine. If we have that and that's reasonable, build new coal-fired plants. The first thing, we got to just ditch this whole carbon dioxide, oh, how horrible it is, CO2. This is gobbledygook. It totally messes up everybody's decision-making thinking. You're put in a bubble where you can't find a solution. So first, you got to just have a lot more power. Texas is growing, the population's growing. They didn't plan for this. They didn't build out the power. Secondly, like you mentioned, the February freeze in 2021, February of 2021. I mean, that was a wake-up call. And if you remember, you and I were on this, we're on LPAC telling people about this the week before it happened, that it was going to happen. Okay, so where are we now? Well, now the state is up to over 34% of its power is now from wind power. 34%. Then it was, I think, in the range of 20%. Solar's coming up. It's still a small percentage, but it's coming up. By the end of the year, it'll be 18 gigawatts. By comparison, the wind is up around 35 gigawatts, or 32 gigawatts of power. Well, what are you doing when you do that? Well, you know, as everybody knows, when the sun don't shine or the wind doesn't blow, these alternate sources of energy are not available, you know? So further, they built this out in West Texas, as you know. You know, this is a big speculative operation, big companies. You know, this isn't some little, you know, hippie, greenie building a solar panel plant or something. You know, this is a massive investment of billions of dollars. This has been ongoing. And now the transmission lines can't handle that capacity. They can't move it onto the system. Well, the point was the wind and the solar are unreliable to begin with. So we don't have the reliable power required. And so now we're in a situation where ERCOT, you know, Mr. Jones, the current operating head of ERCOT, the former head was fired after the February storm, you know, is saying, well, we're going to manage this. We made it through last weekend, and we have, as you said, the whole summer ahead. So we're, you know, this, you know, back in February during the freeze, you know, natural gas plants went down as well, right? Because they weren't maintained. Exactly what you brought up. Well, what's going on here? Solar, wind power, subsidized by the federal government, et cetera, is very cheap once you begin producing it. So these natural gas plants, given Texas' free market system, are not called on to produce power. Well, because they're not called on to produce power day to day, they don't have the capital to reinvest to maintain or upgrade their plants. You know, because natural gas plants, coal plants can, you know, turn on at the drop of a dime. You know, they can power up. Solar and wind don't. You know, you either got it or you don't. So if you're in a crunch, you need those natural gas plants and so forth. Batteries, forget that. The batteries we have today last 4 hours. They discharge in 4 hours. So that's not a solution. So you got to, so we've created a situation where, you know, we've got about 1,000 power plants in Texas, and they're not they're not being maintained, and we're not building up the new capabilities, capacity that we need. So we put ourselves in a cul-de-sac, and we got to build our way out.
That's important, interesting. Now, you mentioned the West Texas. West Texas has become quite a hot spot, especially with these wind farms and what's happening with that. So something that some of the listeners might find completely unrelated here has now come up in terms of West Texas and the cryptocurrency Bitcoin mining operation. And I bring this into play here. I want to get your thoughts on it, because it's now just been announced, based on what we were just talking about, the lack of energy and the grid completely in disarray right now. Well, the fact is that that it was just reported that the Texas Pacific Land Corporation and also a company, big land company, and Mawson Infrastructure, along with JI Energy. JI Energy has the largest Bitcoin mining farm in the state of Wyoming, just to put it in perspective. But it has now announced that it's going to be opening up a major venture in an operation in West Texas. for 60 megawatt Bitcoin mining venture. Okay, so we're talking about power generation completely in devastation right now. But obviously, one thing to note is with the windmills and so forth in West Texas, the wind farms here, we're now going to be buying up 300 acres of land to put Bitcoin cryptocurrency mining facilities. Well, from my understanding, this uses up a massive amount of energy and power. There are people out there, certain Congress members, who are saying that, well, this can actually increase our energy independence here. What? Explain. What's going on with this? Explain.
It hurts the brain to even try to even fathom something like that. Well, okay, so we've got wind and solar. So if we use the wind and solar that we produce right here in Texas, and we use it to produce Bitcoin, and that Bitcoin is worth moolah, well, then we're securing our economic and energy independence because we're doing it all right here. But of course, the crypto is nothing. It's a Ponzi scheme. It's right out there in big letters and covered in the media, but it's still simply a Ponzi scheme, a ripoff. Out there in West Texas, as you may know, you had an Alcoa aluminum plant out there. Draws a lot of electricity. It's shut down now. We need aluminum. As a nation, we need aluminum production. Well, we've got two Bitcoin operators, BitDeer and Riot Chain, that's their names. Yeah, these are mining operations, and they're utilizing the Alcoa aluminum facility to get energy to mine. This is in Rockdale, Texas, town of 5,600 people being invaded. But this makes no sense. No sense. Like I said, we're increasing the destabilization. We're increasing the breakdown, the rate of breakdown of our entire power grid and energy system that runs our industries, our farms, keeps our homes cool or warm during the winter. And we're saying this is creating energy independence. It's the opposite. Once a bunch of T-Bone Pickens type swindlers, build up a big wind power capability in West Texas, well, then they find they don't have the transmission capacity to move it. So then they say, oh, well, we got another scheme. We're going to bring Bitcoin operators in, bit mining operations. Who funds these bit mining operations? This is all offshore. This is crypto is a flow of illicit money, globally. This is where organized crime goes, as part of their process of laundering illicit proceeds or moving it from one purpose to another, gun running, and other, weapons generally, and drugs and all the rest. So we're actually digging ourselves as a state and a nation deeper into the hole. At the same time, as we know, the blackouts are occurring across the whole country, or the threat again of blackouts. MISO, the continental provider, is warning that in the 15-state region in the Midwest, that they're going to be facing brownouts and blackouts this summer. PG&E out in California is saying the same thing. New York, the warnings are going out there publicly. They're telling everybody, you got to cut back, live more miserably. And of course, all this energy affects agriculture and transportation. So you're going to be living on less food, ultimately, as a result of this process. That's what they're saying, rather than admitting, hold it. We got to build out the the platform, the energy platform, the economy we require for the future.
Absolutely. Well, the reality is no electric grid, no internet, no Bitcoin. But at the same time, the real concern should be the impact on the productive economy, on human lives when you don't have efficient energy. When we're at a point where we could go back to periods that are way beyond or past
dark ages.
Dark ages here, absolutely. Where are we going as a nation, as a society?
Yeah. Abraham Lincoln said, every man's a miner. He wasn't talking about crypto.
Right.
He was talking about building the nation, producing the physical goods and services, that we require to develop our nation, to bring into being the next generations. This upward process of real progress. That's where we got to go.
This seems like this is right in line with the green environmentalist agenda as well. And just to make that point here, and going back to pre-industrial revolution, industrial age right now, we've made such breakthroughs, and now we can't even build up the necessary energy capacity. So before we close out here, I want you to give people a sense of what has to be done. You stated that at the very beginning, we have to increase our energy production, our power production. I know, Brian, we're going to be putting out a lot of additional material on LaRouche as to the importance and indispensable importance of our campaign for a national bank, a third national bank, replacing the Federal Reserve with a third national bank. And in a report that we'll be making available to people soon that you just wrote, you highlight a number of areas of critical importance of investment of national credit. And obviously the energy sector is a absolutely indispensable area. So I wanted you to tell us what has to be done right now to address this crisis confronting us. Energy crisis is just one area, but I think that what we're discussing here is absolutely important for people to understand what's going on, especially here in Texas, looking at why we're facing another devastating breakdown of the system.
Well, first of all, mining, picking up from Abraham Lincoln, mining. Look, we produce a fraction of the mineral resources that we require in the nation. President Trump tried to do something about this, to open up more mining, but that, that was, he wasn't able to carry it into a second administration yet, anyway. But look, half of our country is locked up, or I should say half of everything in the west of the United States is locked up. It's owned by the federal government. We're not mining the resources that we require, real mining as opposed to, crypto mining. That's what we got to be doing, first of all, because we need the mineral resources. We take those mineral resources, we can turn it into steel, we can turn it into aluminum and so forth. We need to double and triple our advanced manufacturing capabilities. Not just advanced manufacturing, but our heavy industrial capabilities, basic industrial capabilities. This is to just begin to do this, we require at least another 200 gigawatts of power, nuclear power, to power manufacturing plants. Right now, you build a manufacturing plant in most parts of the country, you wouldn't have the energy to run it day in and day out. Right? What does blackouts and brownouts mean? It means you don't have that capacity anymore. But you can also prove that with facts and figures and so on and so forth. Railroads. I mean, well, first of all, steel. We're importing 20% plus of our steel that we utilize right now, and most of the rest of it is recycled scrap metal. We have no capacity to expand our primary steel production, including specialized alloys for high-speed rail and so forth, just an example. But if we just look at freight rail in the United States, it's completely jammed up. Fertilizer isn't able to move to market. Farmers can't get their grain to the processors. This is just another example. The Surface Transportation Board just held hearings on that over the last few weeks in Washington. You know, it was a quiet riot in terms of the companies there, you know, just, you know, freaking out over, you know, the situation with Union Pacific and the other major railroads. So we've got to expand the track capacity in terms of freight. We need more locomotives. We need more rail workers, a lot more rail workers paid a decent living wage. And water. I mean, industry doesn't run without fresh water. And we're drawing down our water supplies. We got to bring that forward. The drought in California is another reflection of this, or spreading from California now, encompassing over half the country geographically. We require modular nuclear power plants as part of the desalinization process of building out new desalinization plants, not only on the coast, but inland. And we need to talk about big water projects such as moving water, you know, from the Missouri River, the northern reaches of the Missouri River, down into the aquifers, down into the central part of the United States, among other water projects, large-scale water projects. All of this, of course, can't be done with the Federal Reserve, you know, that issues money through its, what's now about 24 primary dealers. Sometimes it's been up to 39, but, you know, this is Goldman Sachs and, you know, the rest of this crowd. Goldman sucks. And it's this crowd, right? You're not creating and generate a flow of resources into the real economy. You're simply feeding the financial bubble. Well, gee whiz, what's happening with the stock market these days? Okay, that's just hot air. It's like crypto. It's hot air. And just like crypto lost $2 trillion in value the other day, the same thing will happen with these financial markets generally. Why? Because there's nothing underneath. Physically, we got to build out the physical economy. And that's where a third national bank is absolutely, absolutely indispensable. You have to have a national bank in which the nation's intention, conscious intention, is to direct credits into these areas of production, you know, and developing the workforce in the process, you know, because we got to build up a new productive workforce as part of this process. But that's a national bank. It's got to be our conscious intention, and it's through a national bank that that's expressed. That's in our Constitution.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Brian. I think this has been a absolutely valuable and extremely important discussion. I encourage everyone who's listening to this discussion to go to LaRouche PAC to sign up for our updates to understand the big solutions, what needs to be done to get out of this crisis. We know that the devastation of the Biden collective is leading to continued breakdown of our nation, but we know what to do about it. LaRouche PAC is leading the charge, and we're organizing the Patriots, the MAGA movement, the America First, because we have to actually understand what it means to be America First. And what Brian just laid out is exactly what that represents. And so you have to know about how to bring that solution about. So go to our website, study our In the Fed National Bank campaign. And again, as said, sign up for our updates at LaRouchePAC.com and support our efforts, contribute to LaRouche PAC so we can continue to get out these types of discussions and to bring to you the needed solutions to get out of the crisis which confronts us today. So I just wanted to bring you this brief update. Thank you, Brian, for joining me. Great discussion, and we'll be back to you all soon.
Thank you. Thank you all.